Ancient warriors mastered turning mental chaos into unshakable power using forgotten strategies. While you battle cognitive overload daily, they already knew how to build impenetrable mental fortresses. Why your mind became the ultimate fortress worth conquering. Here's what the masters of ancient warfare understood that you're missing. Sovereignty isn't about controlling territory, it's about controlling response. And right now, every external force is fighting for command over your internal state, and they're winning without you even noticing the invasion. The philosophers who walked alongside warriors knew something brutal. Your mind is the last unconquerable fortress, but only if you understand how to defend it. You can lose everything physical, but maintain mental dominion, and you remain undefeated. The modern world isn't just stealing your attention, it's staging a coup against your cognitive sovereignty, and most people surrender without a single battle. Every automatic reaction to a ping is territory lost. Every moment you let external chaos dictate internal state is ground ceded. Every time someone else's fake urgency becomes your real emergency, you're living under mental occupation. And here's the devastating part. This feels normal to you. You think everyone exists this way, that there's no alternative, that this is just how life works now. But the strategic minds throughout history would call this what it is: a conquered population that doesn't realize it's been defeated. They built empires on understanding that the war for the mind happens before any physical conflict, and they developed precise methodologies for maintaining absolute control over their mental territory, even when surrounded by chaos that would break lesser minds. The difference between you and them isn't intelligence or willpower, it's strategic positioning. They understood that fortifying the mind isn't a weekend project, it's the work of a lifetime, and the returns are absolute. When you master your response to chaos, everything transforms. Decision-making improves because it's not contaminated by noise. Emotional resilience multiplies because you're not dragged by every passing wave. Mental clarity becomes your ultimate competitive advantage. Here's what nobody tells you. You don't need to avoid the world. That's the trap many fall into. Thinking mental fortress means isolation. Wrong. It means engagement from a position of strength, not desperate reaction. You enter chaos when you choose, with purpose, and exit when you decide, not when chaos ejects you, exhausted and depleted. Power law number 1 states, never outshine the master. But there's a deeper level to this. Never let external forces become the master of your inner peace. You're not here to serve the frantic rhythm of the digital world. You're here to master your own rhythm and make the world adapt to it. Think about history's greatest strategists. They didn't react to the battlefield. They created the battlefield. They chose terrain, timing, or conditions. You can do the same with your mind. You define when you're available. You establish which battles are worth fighting. You decide what deserves your precious mental energy. And when you do this consistently, something profound happens. You start realizing that mental overload was never about information volume. It was about lack of filter, lack of boundaries, lack of command. When you reclaim command, volume becomes irrelevant. You process what matters and let the rest die at the border. That's not avoidance. That's strategic dominance. And it changes absolutely everything about how you navigate modern existence. How the Trojan Horse strategy dismantles anxiety from within. Now, we're entering lethal territory. The Greeks didn't storm Troy with brute force. They entered disguised as a gift. You can deploy the same tactic against your mental enemies, and they won't see it coming until it's too late. Here's the sophistication most people miss when fighting anxiety and mental chaos. They declare direct war. They try to force discipline, eliminate distractions through pure willpower, build walls through sheer determination. It's exhausting and it fails. The ancient masters knew something smarter. They knew the mind works better when guided subtly, not beaten into submission. The Trojan horse of personal transformation works like this. Instead of attacking anxiety head-on, you implant habits that dismantle it from the inside, without it detecting the threat. You're not fighting the enemy, you're infiltrating it with soldiers disguised as harmless routines. Practical example, you struggle with constant distraction. The obvious move is forced discipline, but the Trojan horse strategy is different. You create an apparently innocent habit, like a 10-minute walk without your phone every morning. Seems small, almost pointless. But this habit is secretly training your mind to function without constant stimulation. It's building tolerance for boredom. It's fortifying your capacity to be present. It's a gift carrying a hidden army. The warriors of feudal Japan understood this at a molecular level. They had a principle called preparing the victory before the battle. They positioned every element of life so that when conflict arrived, the outcome was already decided. You can do this with your routine. Structure your environment, schedules, systems so that resisting mental overload becomes the path of least resistance, not greatest effort. Power Law 38 teaches, think as you like, but behave like others. The ancient generals mastered this. They didn't reveal true intentions. They kept minds fortified while appearing in disarray. They let the enemy believe victory was near while preparing the decisive blow at the exact right moment. You can apply this now. Stop declaring war on your own mind. Stop trying to force concentration through pure will. The strategy masters knew the mind functions optimally when deceived, when guided subtly, not when brutalized by discipline. They used strategic inaction as the supreme weapon. Imagine a general surrounded by enemy forces. The obvious move would be attack or flee. But he does nothing. He waits, observes, lets the enemy exhaust itself in its own anxiety, lets time work in his favor, and when the precise moment arrives, he acts once, devastatingly. You're surrounded by cognitive demands. Your instinct is to react to all of them, respond, resolve, attend. But that depletes you. Ancient strategy suggests the opposite. Filter, wait, act only when there's maximum advantage. It's not procrastination, it's strategic mastery of time and mental energy. And this changes everything when you understand how to deploy it consistently in daily battle. What happens when you master the scorched earth mental policy? You've probably noticed that moments of greatest mental vulnerability happen exactly when you're trying to protect everything simultaneously. It's a cruel paradox. The more you try to defend, the more fragile you become. Ancient strategy masters had a radical solution: the mental scorched earth policy. Here's the concept: when you can't defend everything, defend only what truly matters and destroy the rest before the enemy can use it against you. In your mind's context, this means ruthlessly eliminating everything that consumes energy without returning equivalent value. Empty commitments, toxic relationships, draining habits, information that pollutes your thinking. You don't need to improve these things. You need to annihilate them. But there's a sophistication here most people miss. It's not about forced minimalism or living in a digital cave. It's about surgical precision. A Roman general knew exactly which villages to burn and which to preserve. You need the same discernment. Which parts of your life are costing more than they return? That's the question separating fortress from prison. The mistake people make is treating all mental intrusions equally. They're not. Some are sophisticated attacks requiring complex defenses. Others are just noise that dies with simple boundaries. The strategists who changed history knew how to distinguish between threats requiring engagement and threats requiring complete dismissal. Here's where it gets powerful. Once you eliminate the non-essential aggressively, you're not just reducing load. You're creating surplus mental capacity. That surplus becomes your war chest. It's what you deploy when real challenges arrive. It's why some people seem to handle massive pressure while others crack under minor stress. It's not genetics. It's strategic resource allocation. The warriors understood something most modern productivity gurus miss entirely. Energy management isn't about doing more efficiently. It's about doing strategically less, so you can dominate what remains. When you apply scorched earth to your mental territory, you're not retreating. You're consolidating power in defensible positions. Think about a castle under siege. The Lord doesn't try to defend every inch of surrounding land. He pulls everything valuable inside the walls, burns the rest, and makes it impossible for the enemy to find resources. Your attention works the same way. Pull it inside your chosen priorities. Burn access to everything else. Make it impossible for mental invaders to find footholds. And here's the brutal truth nobody wants to hear. Most of what you think you need to defend isn't actually yours. It's just territory you've been conditioned to protect. someone else's expectations, society's demands, cultural programming about what you should care about. The scorched earth policy isn't just tactical, it's liberation. What's one thing consuming your mental energy that you could completely eliminate rather than manage? Drop the word fortress in the comments if you're starting to see which territories aren't worth defending. And if this strategic approach is reshaping how you think about mental resilience, hit that like and subscribe, because we're about to deploy the final tactic that makes all of this permanent. Why strategic retreat multiplies your mental dominance. Here's the tactic that separates amateurs from masters: knowing when to retreat. And not just any retreat, but the kind that positions devastating counterattacks. The armies of the steppes perfected this. When losing, they'd fall back. The enemy pursued, confident in victory, but it was a trap. They were being led to favorable terrain, exhausting their forces, walking into a prepared ambush. You can deploy this when you feel you're losing the mental battle. Instead of forcing productivity when exhausted, you retreat strategically. Rest, recharge, but with purpose. It's not surrender, it's preparation for a stronger counter. When you return with multiplied force and crush what previously dominated you. Modern culture has brainwashed you into thinking any retreat is weakness. That's exactly what your enemies want you to believe. Because a mind that never retreats is a mind that burns out, breaks down, becomes easily conquered. The strategic minds knew better. They knew that controlled retreat preserves force, while stubborn defense bleeds it dry. But here's the sophistication: strategic retreat isn't random, it's calculated. You're not running from everything. You're choosing specific moments to disengage, specific battles to postpone, specific territories to temporarily abandon. And you're doing it when you still have strength, not when you're already broken. The principle of patience as a weapon comes into full force here. We live in an age demanding instant gratification. You want results now, answers now, solutions now. But that puts you in permanent weakness. When you need something immediately, you accept anything. Ancient strategists cultivated the capacity to wait for the perfect moment. They knew one action at the right time beats 1,000 rushed actions. How does this translate for you? It means when anxiety attacks demanding immediate decision, you breathe and wait. Not because you're avoiding, but because you're positioning the perfect move. 90% of urgencies aren't truly urgent. They're just disguised as urgent. When you master strategic patience, you can tell the difference, and that gives you tremendous power. There's something profound that happens when you combine scorched earth with strategic retreat. You're not just defending anymore. You're creating conditions where victory becomes inevitable. You've eliminated all non-essential drains. You've positioned your resources optimally. You've chosen your battles with precision. And you've mastered the timing of engagement and disengagement. The mental fortress you're building isn't static walls. It's a dynamic system that adapts, that knows when to hold ground, and when to yield it temporarily for greater advantage. That's what made certain warriors legendary. Not their strength, but their strategic flexibility combined with absolute clarity about core objectives. What battle are you fighting right now that actually deserves strategic retreat instead of continued engagement? And how would your mental state transform if you stopped treating every challenge as something requiring immediate confrontation? These aren't rhetorical questions. They're the difference between exhaustion and mastery, between being controlled by chaos and commanding it. How ancient mental warfare creates your unstoppable advantage today. We've reached the final territory. After building defenses, applying ancient tactics, transforming vulnerability into advantage, and mastering strategic retreat, there's one ultimate truth. This isn't about becoming someone different. It's about remembering what warriors always knew. Your mind is the ultimate weapon, and nobody else should ever hold the trigger. The deception and disorientation principle works both ways. You've learned to deceive chaos, to redirect attacks, to make mental invaders work against themselves. But here's the deeper level. You're also breaking free from the greatest deception of all, the lie that you must be constantly available, perpetually productive, always responding. That's enemy propaganda designed to keep you weak. When you filter mental noise and engineer your brain to focus strategically, you're not becoming robotic. You're becoming sovereign. There's a massive difference. Robots follow programming. Sovereigns create their own code and make reality adapt to it. The ancient strategists were sovereigns of their mental domains. They didn't let battlefield chaos penetrate inner sanctum. Neither should you. Here's what changes when you fully integrate these warfare principles. Better decision-making because you're not contaminated by noise. Enhanced emotional resilience because you're not dragged by every wave. Renewed clarity that becomes your sharpest competitive edge. But more than that, you develop something rare, the capacity to remain unmoved in the center of chaos. Not because you're disconnected, but because you're strategically positioned. The long-term benefits compound brutally in your favor. While others exhaust themselves reacting to everything, you're preserving energy for what matters. While they're spread thin across 1,000 fronts, you're dominating the 3 that determine victory. While they're being played by external forces, you're playing the long game they can't even see. It's not about avoiding the world. That's what weak minds do. It's about engaging from absolute strength, on your terms, when you choose. You enter chaos with purpose and exit with precision. You're never trapped because you're never fighting without clear strategic advantage. This is what mental fortification truly means. The warriors throughout history faced overwhelming odds, regularly. What separated survivors from casualties wasn't luck. It was this exact strategic mindset applied ruthlessly. They knew which hills to die on and which to abandon. They knew when to strike and when to disappear. They knew their mental fortress was their only permanent territory, and they defended it absolutely. You now have the same toolkit they used. Ancient psychological warfare adapted for modern cognitive battles. The question isn't whether these strategies work. History proved they dominate. The question is whether you'll actually deploy them or just admire them. Theoretically. Type sovereignty in the comments if you understand this isn't about surface techniques, but about reclaiming mental territory you didn't even know you'd lost. What will you do differently tomorrow knowing these ancestral strategies? If this resonated deeply, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this with someone who needs to reclaim mental control. The cognitive war is real, but now, you have the weapons that win.